I'm talking to you in this tutorial about how we navigate our course and make sure that we have completed all of our assignments in Flex in lieu of the calendar. So if you are coming from A, B, or C track, you're probably used to using the course calendar where many of the assignments are listed per day, and you can click right there and that's the link to your assignment. Flex works a little bit differently for a few reasons. One, because in order to do the calendar, it would be 3 grade levels times 2 tracks for every single unit, and it doesn't make sense. It's just not time efficient in order to make that happen. And so that's the first reason. The second reason is because a lot of what we do for Flex is an ongoing thing where you don't need to come into Schoology every day, like your history or your math or your grammar, for example. If you already know the routine and you've printed things at the beginning of the unit, it's unnecessary to be coming into Schoology for every single subject. So instead, to keep track and make sure that all of the boxes are checked each day, for you and for your student, I've created weekly homeschool checklists. And I have this year one for 3rd grade and then a different one for 4th and 5th grade, just because the language arts varies a little bit between those grades. So these are located either in the Flex Track Needs to Know folder, you'll find them there, and then also they will be located in the unit folder as well. Every unit will have it toward the top. So you can see right here, 3rd grade weekly homeschool checklist and the 4th, 5th one right here. But I have gone ahead and loaded these pages so that they're easy to see. So this one is 3rd grade. And for 3rd grade, you can see here that our math is sectioned off into 3 sections. Khan Academy for 50 minutes. Now, this would include the assignments for Khan, and then anything over and above would be within the mission, and that's explained in the tutorials. And then there's the math journal entry with vocabulary, and then the reflex. So that is done on all 3 days. So that's why you have check boxes for all 3 days for every section of math. And then for your ELA and history, you have your history assignment, which will take you approximately 45 minutes a day. And you're going to be doing that all 3 homeschool days. And then you have your reading lesson, which happens 1 time per week. And it's suggested, highly suggested, except for perhaps a week where maybe we're off for a Monday, that this is done on day 1 for your homeschool week. And that is so that your student comes front loaded to class with that information. So you'll notice that there are some dashes on these 2. That's because there is no reading lesson for those 2 days. It's only for this day. And then you'll also see that the reading lesson toggles with the writing lesson. So the writing lesson, as it's written, is going to be technically 3 days, but really for homeschool, you are doing 2 heavier days of writing. And then that 3rd one is just a catch-up day where if your student was a little bit behind, you make sure it gets finished, or if you are a little bit behind on grading with the rubric and you need to take a look at that writing, that's your catch-up day. So more of that is explained in the IEW tutorial. And then your choice reading, which is mandatory, is 3 days a week. So that's right here for your check. And then your book talk and submitting your checkup form only happens once a week, and that is submitted at the end of the week. So I suggest that your book talk happens that same day, but it's up to you. You can do the book talk as long as it's done sometime during the week. You can switch that around if you'd like. But again, you see that there's these dashes because it's not happening those days. And then for 3rd grade, you have your essentials lesson. That is your language arts. It includes your spelling, grammar, and handwriting, and that is happening 3 days during the week. So for each homeschool day, you're going to go ahead and just go through this checklist and check your lessons, and as you do it, you're going to check this off. I suggest putting it in a sheet protector, or you can laminate it, and that way you can use a dry erase marker. It makes it really easy so you don't have to be printing a whole ton of these, or maybe you like to print them, and that's completely fine too. Some families and students who need a little bit more support in the structure of their homeschool days and weeks, I will ask to be able to see these at conferences and sometimes weekly. So it also doubles as a great accountability tool too, if that's needed. So that's the 3rd grade one. And then 4th and 5th grade looks very similar. There are just a few differences here. So Con is the same, history is the same, reading and writing are the same. Now you'll notice that Reading Plus is happening 2 days a week for 20 minutes. If your student wants to do it 3 days a week, great. But this is a 4th and 5th grade requirement because they aren't doing that Logic of English piece. Choice reading is happening just like the 3rd grade one, Book Talk once a week. And then 4th and 5th grade have separate components for these other pieces. So there is spelling 3 days a week. There's Fix-It Grammar 3 days a week. And then there is handwriting or typing, depending on what's assigned for the unit, twice a week. And then 50 States by Memory is 5th grade only, and that's happening a couple times a week. So some of this, particularly in this area with the language arts, can be adapted a bit. So for example, the spelling is going to be a spelling book, and you can just pace that throughout the year. There's really no need to go into Schoology. You can just figure out, basically a lesson a week, or however that needs to pace out so that you're finished with the book by the end of the year. And if that works out that you can do it in 2 days, if your student's a really great speller and doesn't need as much help with that, that's completely fine. So you've got some flexibility there. Fix-It Grammar, a lot of families said last year that it didn't take them very long, and so really it was pretty easy to complete in 2 days as opposed to 3. So there's some wiggle room here. But you will notice that on the side it gives suggested periods of time for how long this should take. Now some things are set in stone, like the math, for example. It should be a minimum of the time limits that are written up in here. But as for and same with choice reading, but as for some of the others, if your assignments are taking significantly more time than what is suggested here, please let me know. I don't want anyone to feel like they're drowning. I don't want anyone to feel like they're behind the ball. That's a terrible feeling. I've experienced that as a homeschool mom before, and it's crummy, and I don't want you to be sitting in that place and be content with that. So please reach out to me early and often so that we can individualize this plan for your student. And I've done this many a times with many different families, and there are things that we can do to lighten the load, to make it feel like a fun experience as opposed to drudgery every day, because it's just too much going on. And then along those lines, I just wanted to show you real quickly, I do have a document that's specifically a typical homeschool day at a glance. With those times, it's just written out a little bit differently, so this might make sense better to some families than others. So I do also highly recommend for 3rd grade, even though it's not on that homeschool checklist, that your student is practicing the typing. So it's not officially on here, but definitely your student does need to be practicing those typing skills. So you can, do it on the weekend some, or however you want to fit that in. It's not something that I'm going to be asking you about at conference if you have a 3rd grade student, but those typing skills are important, and so I really highly suggest that you fit that in somewhere, wherever it makes sense for you.